Welcome to the Quantum Biology Collective podcast, where we break down the practical strategies of this emerging science, starting with healthy light habits and going wherever the quantum superhighway takes us. This is your host, executive and life coach Meredith Oak, with a quick reminder that podcasts are conversations, not consultations, and definitely not medical advice. We're here for informational purposes only. To follow up with our amazing guests, please do check out the show notes, and to stay in the loop with the QBC podcast, join our email list, also linked in the show notes. All right. For the third time on the QVC podcast, I'm delighted to welcome back Sara Pugh, PhD. Sara is a very interesting practitioner. She currently works with clients, helping them with all kinds of things in terms of their health and wellness and spiritual fitness. But Sara started out as a hardcore scientist. She has degrees in biochemistry and genetics, and she has a PhD in molecular mechanisms and biophysics. So that's where she started. She became very disillusioned with the scientific field and with the type of work that she was being asked to do. So she left and studied Pilates and hypnosis, and is now currently studying sacred geometry. So she is a very well-rounded sort of polymath type person, and I love talking with her about all the things. And in this episode, what Sara really wanted to discuss was the idea that we can live optimal quantum healthy lifestyles no matter where we are. Right. I think sometimes we have the idea like, oh, well, I live downtown in a city, so I can't really do those things, or I live at a really high latitude, or I have this or that or whatever. And there's an idea that we have to live, on a beach at the equator in order to really leverage the strategies that quantum biology tells us are so important. And Sara wanted to make the point that that's not true. We just need to learn how to be sort of quantum health detectives and find the best way to leverage whatever location we happen to be in, whether it's where we live or where we're visiting. So Sara did like a run through of 3 very different types of locations. Her home in Yorkshire in the UK, a very secluded town up in the mountains in Switzerland, and a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia in the United States. And she talked about all the different ways that she harnessed the power of quantum health and balanced out some of the negative aspects of those locations. And the whole point of this podcast is to help you do the same thing for wherever you are. So as Sara explains how she thought about things and what she looked at and what kind of choices she made, apply that to you wherever you are. So we had a great conversation. We started off talking about structured water, and then we went down, as we always do, the quantum health rabbit hole. So enjoy learning from Sara. I always do. And of course, please don't forget to visit oncharge.com and put in QBC code at the checkout if you decide to purchase any of their lovely products. They have given a 15% discount to all of the podcast listeners here, which we very much appreciate. So if you need anything, definitely keep them top of mind. All right, here is Sara. Dr. Sara Pugh, I am so excited to have you back on the QBC podcast. And this was a last minute. So everybody, you're getting just like a nice fresh chat. We did not have time to plan out a big thing. So but Sara, you always have so much to say. I'm just going to give you the floor. And so let's start out. We have 2 other podcast interviews with you, which I highly recommend people check out. But if they're new to you, just give us a quick overview of the Sara Pugh journey to quantum biology.
Okay, I'll do the academic journey very quickly. So I started out as a biochemist, and I did genetics as well. Then I did a PhD in biophysics. So that's when I first encountered light and tryptophans and shining UV light onto things. But I didn't really understand the significance of that in terms of neurotransmitters or thyroid. Then I got disillusioned with science because of a project I did on statins and cholesterol. And cholesterol, as we know in the quantum world, is a sort of a vitally important molecule. The last thing it's trying to do is kill us. It's probably one of the most interesting molecules in our bodies, along with stuff like melanin. So then after that, I became a Pilates teacher because I've always been interested in movement. So that was how then I sort of began to connect sort of fascia and collagen into the equation. I did some functional neurology as well because it's kind of another dimension for training, but it's also, that's when I learned about how important the eye was, even though I didn't understand anything about eye clocks or circadian biology then. During my time not working in science, I met a lot of sort of energy healers like Reiki teachers and people who use crystals. And I never laughed at it, but I didn't really understand it. So I always had that on a shelf of something to learn more about. And then I got back into light again because I bought some blue blocking glasses. I think it was about like 8 years ago or even more when Dave Asprey first appeared on the scene. So that was when I first became aware of blocking blue light and easy water. And that's when I first discovered Dr. Stephanie Seneff. And then it kind of just has been a learning curve all the way from there. And I think my main driver to improve my life would be probably mental health situations. And I never really appreciated how much of a problem sitting in blue light all day on my computer was. And it really culminated, and I took it much more seriously just before the pandemic, because I was stuck inside working on a business. And then I began to piece lots of more bits into the puzzle about magnetism, because people often find that the most confusing. And then water, I've got very deeply into that now. I've just done a second interview with Dr. Gerald Pollack about his new paper, which shows that the heart, you don't need a heart for your blood to move around the body, and you can actually see a picture of exclusion zone water. And then, like, even deeper again with Veda Austin and people like Dr. Alex Ling. And then where I am right now is, and we're not going to talk about it in this podcast, is plasma, because the universe is 0.0001% matter and then 99.99% plasma or partial atoms, which would be electrons, protons, a deuteron, that's deuterium, and ions. But it's all about, I'm all about thinking, okay, well, even if I don't exist and I'm just made of electromagnetic waves, I can still touch the table, I can still eat food, I can still get sunburnt, I can still get cold, I still have to participate in society and be nice to other people, and I still have things to do. So it's all about collecting all of these ideas from science, as wacky as they may sound, and then condensing them down into things that are actually doable and practical for the daily life person. And it can be very tempting to just information bomb people. And I've done that before and given them analysis paralysis. So I think it's just about always me remembering that I've had like sort of a whole lifetime since I was 19, being exposed to sort of science and photons and all of this, and just not to rush people, because the feeling of trying to drink from a hose pipe is actually really stressful. And then I haven't mentioned this yet, but I'm massively into sort of spirituality and the ancients and sacred geometry and stuff like that. So I've also got this side of me that wants to integrate sort of earth, fire, water, and air, and then spirit, which would be called ether, into practical daily life, and sort of linking up stuff to do with our ancestors, which may have sounded ridiculous to me 20 years ago, but the more I sort of find, oh, actually, this isn't working properly, I wonder what our ancestors did, which order did they start doing things in, and they would have generally started with the earth element. So that to me is sort of be grounding, and a lot of people jump over the grounding bit and they want to get straight into the chroma lamp or the magnetico or a holy hydrogen machine or naked sunbathing. And sometimes it's just about thinking, okay, let's just go back to basics and start slowly.
Yeah, it's true. I think what's so amazing about the field of quantum biology, and what we're really talking about, which is applied quantum biology, right?
Yeah.
But like the sort of clinical application, or not even clinical, just the day-to-day application of what this science means. It's like the quantum covers all of the woo, and the biology covers all of the matter. And we are just at the beginning of the beginning of the beginning of understanding from a scientific perspective how those weave together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you put it really beautifully, because even people like David Bohm say that really nobody understands quantum mechanics. And there's lots of like brilliant scientists who just have 10 times or 1,000 times my intellect, yet they weren't able to practically put it into daily life. And I wish I'd have known people like David Bohm or Peter Mitchell, who again he won a Nobel Prize to do with proticity in membranes in the mitochondria, the proton flow or proticity, because they had terribly bad health. And I often think that I wish I could have been friends with them to just show them how, okay, you don't need to take all this. You just need to see the sunrise, then you need to ground, then you need to get the UV light, then you need to make sure your water's clean and distilled, and then you need to eat food that provides the right amount of energy but very good information, and you must not be on your computer like really late at night exposing yourself to blue light, and you must sleep. And then I think a lot of them could have sort of been with us longer, because there's so many great scientists that suffered terrible ill health. And then when I interviewed Professor Robert Temple, I did bring this up. How could somebody with such bad physical health have such a phenomenally amazing intellect? So he was then sort of went into a big rabbit hole about our physical body and our plasma bodies sort of blending and touching when they shouldn't be. But exactly as you said, I think it's about making sure that everything, you can back it up with what we currently know about science, and then make it practical for the daily life person, but also make it in a way that they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, so they can explain to their neighbor or their family or their doctor, okay, I want to buy this panel, or I'm going to just buy shoes with a leather sole and walk more, or I'm going to swim in a lake, and be able to sort of justify why they're doing it. Although personally, to me, I don't actually think quantum biology practices are that unusual anyway. Even the blue blockers, I've got probably 11 pairs, of which I've lost 8 now, so I'm down to 3. Nobody's ever said anything ever. I've worn them like everywhere. But the only thing that people always comment on is my iPhone being red, because I always change the screen. And even people I don't know always have to say, oh, are you colorblind, or what's wrong with your phone? And it's kind of in some ways a great pulling tool, because I had a really good chat with somebody on an aeroplane coming back from Switzerland, because that's something I'd want to talk about in this podcast, as places where you can do quantum biology, whether it's your location, somewhere like the 30th latitude, somewhere up a mountain. And I would say the red phone is like I don't want to be rude or anything, but I think it might be one of my, pickup.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also with my water, like I've got this is my new favorite water at the moment. This is the magnetic vortex.
Oh my goodness. What's happening there? What is that?
Vortex. Can you see it?
Maybe yeah. Okay, so it sounds a bit like a blender, but it's a cup with water and it's spinning it.
Yeah, so
it's creating a vortex in the water. So it's structuring the water.
Yes, it's based on the work of Victor Schallberg, the water wizard. I think it was about 200 years ago. And it's about the way in which sort of water that flows down a mountain and spirals and creates these patches of energetic water where the fish just sort of sit in and just hang out, because it's it's just another way to structure water. So people are always really fascinated by my vortexer, and it's got a magnet in it and a copper coil. So, and it's made by an inventor called Harry Rhodes in the UK. Again, Rabbit Hole Central. He's a bit like Harold Tears and the Cosmic Tower, and he's just a layman that became an inventor, and he makes all kinds of unusual things, and he knows all about water. He tells me that there's actually 32 different kinds of structured water, and Albert St. Georgi also said there was about 22 different kinds of ice. So even though Dr. Gerald Pollack says there's the 4th phase of water, the gel water, I think within that there's going to be a lot more about water. And then Veda Austin, of course, talks about the God consciousness being in the water, and we're just a vessel to carry it. People like Robert Temple will say, actually, we're just a vessel for the plasma. And René Descartes called our soul the thinking substance, and Robert would say it'd be plasma. So there's all kinds of interesting things to talk about in quantum biology. But I would just say a lot of it is either free or harmless, as in, you're not going to hurt yourself with vortexing water. And even if people laugh at it, they are very curious, and then you can start then it's a way in for me to start talking about distilling tap water and remineralizing and getting people interested in water, because I meet so many people and they have all these complicated machines. And I had my business advisor, he, goodness knows how much money he has. He's a lovely man, but he drinks tap water. And I said, mate, this is going to have to stop, I'm afraid. You don't know what's in it. And then they all had a lesson. And he has this club called Tiger 22. And it's all, you have to have a net worth of over something like, I don't know, 100 million to be in it. And so I had the opportunity to talk to all these people about quantum biology, and they absolutely loved it because they'd never come across it before. And it was just like really basic things. And they were fascinated by just the most unusual stuff. And I think the other thing I love about quantum biology, it's also brings you back into that kind of joy or child mindset of, oh, wow, isn't that pretty? Look at that light and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds us that everything around us has a purpose, and we're in connection with it and we're talking to it. And so when material life starts to feel heavy, you walk outside and look at a tree for a few minutes, and it's like a reminder that, oh, we're all just part of the same energetic field. Okay, super quickly, tell me what are the health benefits of putting my water in your little vortexer? Why should I drink structured water?
Well, I suppose when I was in Switzerland, the water that you get, it's like a big trough, and it comes out and it's all outside, and you can see it coming down the mountain, collecting minerals on the way. Then it be cleaned a bit, and it's being structured by the sun, so it's creating these microgeometries in which there'd be free electrons, and it's also as I was saying before, it's about information and getting information from nature into the water, and then you would drink it. So it's nothing magical structuring water, because what's happened with the tap water is it's sort of been crashed about in some pipes, and then it's been treated, and then when it comes out, it's lost about 40 or even more % of its coherence, so it's in effect dead water. And all of these structuring devices tend to just revolve around magnetism and vortexing. So that would be how the water comes crashing down the mountain. And then the water sitting in the sunlight would be how the red light again helps to energize this water. But there's a lot more to the different frequencies. I'm not pretending to be an expert, but all you're doing is you're making the information in the water be better quality again, and you're taking out any sort of bad information by distilling it. But if you want a biochemistry sort of answer, there's a horrendous amount of unpleasant chemicals in tap water. So if you distill it, they get left behind. You now have completely clean water, clean slate. You can put whatever minerals you want in it. You can put your affirmations, your energy into it. And this is something that if someone had said to me this 20 years ago, because I worked as a biochemist then, I'd have rolled around on the floor laughing my head off. But the more I've got connected into quantum biology, I always get somewhere and think I can't go any further. And it's always been my closed-mindedness. So as soon as I just totally embraced this water and this energy water, it opened a massive door, because this is just the beginning of what you can do with water. If you get into Vader Austin and Dr. Alex Ling, Dr. Ling has been studying, he used to be a medical doctor. Well, he is a medical doctor. He's a family doctor in the US, or we call it a GP in the UK. And he's got this water which has got atomic gold, water-soluble frankincense and myrrh, and then he's imbued love frequencies into this water. And apparently this is like the thing at the moment. But I was just thinking to myself, it relates back to what you were saying about being in a love mindset and the collective when we're all together. But apparently this water sort of can be helpful for people to raise their vibrations. Meant to be able to feel it. So I think it's to do with this drinking water with energy and information in it. It can be profoundly life-changing, because we are made of water and plasma, but the water, some, like I was saying before, some people think that we're the vessel to carry the consciousness. And I'm just now like, okay, it doesn't matter how nuts something sounds when it comes to water. I'm just going to give it a go, be open-minded, see how I feel. And, it's not going to hurt me with my frankincense, gold and myrrh water with the love frequency imbued in it, coming. So it's, And I could go on for ages about different things I've done to structure water. I've put water on my Magnetico in a copper vessel and all sorts of things. And personally, to me, I find that it tastes absolutely delicious. And there's definitely some kind of energy in it. Even if people don't want to believe in hexagons popping out electrons and stuff like that, it's fine. They should just try the water, because I do find that it really quenches not just my thirst, but just it's just so nice. And I definitely would find that I have a lower desire for food electrons when I get into my water. But then we have to obviously be careful not to overdrink water, because that you can put pressure on the pituitary gland. So we always have to not do things to excess, even with
Right.
water.
So the structured water brings more energy into our body. You feel more revitalized, happier, just as a different experience than drinking dead water.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also it's back to this thing I was saying about energy and information. Everything's energy and information, and the information is more important than the energies. This is sort of people like Pressman's work. He was a Russian scientist, and he published a sort of a big book on this in 1968. I won't go into everything, but it was about how a small amount of information, like one photon hitting a person, even though we're a great big thing, only about 3 or 4 photons hitting our retina can be enough to signal a huge cascade of biochemistry, because that electron's bringing brand new information that we didn't have. But in a more simple daily life way of explaining it, if we think about processed food, it's high energy but low information. So when we get into this structured water idea, I would say that the tap water is not only low energy, but it's also low information or bad information, because, um, you know, it, if we want to be sort of animistic about it, everything's conscious, even crystals and stuff like that. So again, with the water, if we have water that's been treated nicely, and we've chosen what energy we subject it to, we've put an affirmation in it that we want for the day, is not being shouted at or argued around, I think it can have a profound effect. And I can't believe these words just came out of my mouth, because it's just one of those things to do with, imagine if my PhD supervisor listened to what I say now about things. But everything also is all about experience and personal experience. That's why now I'm just open to anything. I'm not machines. No, I try and stay. If someone waves a fancy machine at me, I'm a bit like, no, I'm not interested. If it's some kind of something to do with water or nature or crystals or sacred geometry or all that kind of natural stuff I can't hurt myself with, that doesn't plug in the wall, that our ancients did, but then I'm really up for it, because I think it's like you said, it's about reconnecting with natural things that aren't very expensive, and even if it's all nonsense, it'll just do nothing, and it won't hurt me.
Yes. And yeah, and we'd learn to develop agency and intuition in terms of choosing what works for us, and we don't have to get a prescription if there aren't bad side effects, right? We can experiment and build out our own health life in a way that works for us. And speaking of that, so you have been traveling and have sort of some interesting takes on how to practice quantum biology depending on what location you're in. So let's talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, I can always start with what I've got here at the moment in the UK. So the weather isn't great, but where I live is really, really quiet, and I've got quite easy access to a lake to swim in. I can go out there and walk in a forest. Then there's a place about 2 miles away that I can drive to that has really bad phone reception. It's like this massive Chevin. So you can imagine what that means. It's kind of really low non-native EMF, and loads of things like wild raspberries and strawberries and berries and stuff and apple trees. I've got loads in my garden, and then they grow out in the wild because people have thrown an apple from a picnic loads of times, and there's all golden delicious Granny Smiths growing in random places. So I've got that. So I don't have the weather, and also I live about 2.5 miles from an airport, so I've got that problem, which I'm not going to go into. other than what I've started to do with life now is, even if something's negative, I'll find a positive from it. So it's like,
Right.
okay, the airport's 2 miles away. So what? Just use it and go to nice places.
Right.
So I'll
So
start
it's
off.
like looking at your location, seeing what's around, and finding the ways to best support your biology by what's available for where you live. So you
Yes.
have found the lake, you found this park with low EMFs where you can go and rejuvenate your cells, pick locally growing food and eat that. Okay, I love this. Great, keep going.
Yeah, exactly. And then when it comes to buying things, we can all choose what we want to buy, and it doesn't. You don't need a massive budget. So I won't go into what I own. So I don't have a sauna at home, but there is a place where it's about a 25-minute drive, and there's a sauna, and it's got a really lovely location to walk around. The hottest sauna I've ever been in, but it is quite a drive. So it's like an hour out of my life driving there and back, but I can listen to a podcast. So I've got the sauna, but it's something I'll probably do once or twice a week, if that, even though I pay for the membership to go there, and it's a really amazing place to walk. Um, so I've got places where I can ground, and like I would say, at the moment in the UK, the lacking factor is the ultraviolet light, but I've still got a sunrise and a sunset that I can do, so that's kind of covered. So the UV is the problem. So I decided a week ago that I had to just get away because it's just gone crazy, the cloud problem here. So I went to Switzerland. It's a place called Burgoon. I've been before because I went to Keto conference there twice, and it's sort of this remote village in Switzerland. And it's got how, like, you can just imagine it's got a cobbled street, and they're a bit sort of, they're very conscious of electricity. So the place I stayed in, they didn't have any lights, so you had a button you could press, and then the light would turn off, and then it would just kind of turn off again after about 5 minutes. It's not very densely populated. It's pretty high up as well. And all of the food there was, like, you could see the cow that you could probably going to be eating the next day. There was lots of, I bought raw butter, raw everything, and then there was sort of locally growing fruit. And because my German's so bad, that there's this sort of places where you pick meat or whatever you want, raw cheese, and then you just put money in a box, and they just assume that it's, so I didn't have to ask anybody for anything. So I definitely had the benefit of really good quality food. But just to go back to the UK for a moment, I live in Yorkshire, so there are lots of farms and things around anyway. So for people who are listening, if they're not familiar with Yorkshire, they may have watched Gentleman Jack, the Anne Lister programme with Halifax, because I know that got massive in America. So I live very near to that area. So I do have, to some extent, the access to the rurality, but Burgoon is a whole other level of. There was a phone tower in the village, unfortunately quite near to me, but very interestingly, it didn't bother me very much because it was actually only a 3G one. So there was that there. But other than that, it was like the ultimate paradise for grounding. And because there was all these trees, and you could go up into the mountain, and it went on forever and ever. Because I was high up, there was lots of UV light, so the UVI index sort of went up to about 9 every day, and I was high up. With the actual altitude, I was huffing and puffing a bit on the first couple of days because I went up the mountain every day. Then I realized, oh no, you're not just getting old, it's like an altitude thing. So I had the benefit of some altitude training. It was quiet, except the cows all had bells on them, and they had this church that used to ring its bell actually in the daytime, every quarter of an hour. Obviously, watches don't exist in Burgoon or whatever, but it's kind of
I love it.
the cowbells are quite sort of nice, like an alpine cow, and the church banging away. At least it stopped during the night. So, and that was interesting. So, in terms of that, what I didn't have there is, like I was saying, I can't speak Swiss German, and the lady whose house I stayed in, she could speak Italian, Spanish, German, Swiss German. I can speak French; she couldn't speak French, and her
Oh
English.
no, no overlaps.
Yeah, but we did manage to bond massively because I lost her towel as well. And I had to tell her. So it's called DeepL. It's like the best translator that you can get. So we used to write sentences to each other. And then she can speak German, so she massively helped me with all the pronunciation. And because it's quite rural, a lot of the people can't speak English. So I was sort of in some ways completely isolated from other humans, and I had to just exist with my own company. But luckily, over the years, I've made friends with myself. So I actually was fine going on my walks and trying to find secret places to naked sunbathe, which is a bit like this book called The Goose Laying an Egg. No, The Goose Wants to Lay an Egg. It's quite a famous child book, and it's about this goose that looks around all these different places because she wants to make a nest, and there's always something wrong with, like, she goes and wants to lay an egg. It's like a nice comfy leather thing, and realizes, oh no, it's a tractor seat. So this is a bit like me trying to look for places to do naked sunbathing, even though the Swiss and the Germans love being naked. And it's also sometimes a bit like me looking for somewhere to do quantum biology in or live. And I did see a house up the mountain. I thought, oh, I'm going to buy that one day. But I think back to what you were saying about the connecting with other people, I did actually miss the ability to be able to have a proper conversation with people rather than just my terrible German and their sort of English, which was better than my German, or us having to do it through the phone. So that idea of connecting to other people, I did notice that I missed it.
That's a really good point, because I think I've heard that from people, right? They're like, I was trying to optimize everything, so I moved to Mexico for 3 months for the light and the lower EMFs and the this and the that. But I had no social network, I had no friends, I got really sad and lonely, which also isn't good for quantum biology. So it's very holistic, and so I love how you're walking us through different ways. We could travel to get what we're missing at home, and we can make the best of what we have available to us and focus on the things that are in our environment that are really helpful instead of worrying about what's not great. Love it. So then you also went to Georgia in the United States, correct?
Yes. This is a really different experience because...
Okay, so we're going from the hilltops of Switzerland to suburban Atlanta. Is that where you were?
Yes. So it was Decatur. So I went there. I've been twice, and I'm going again very soon. So I went. I went to stay with a friend, and because she her daughter's my goddaughter as well. So I went to stay with a friend who I'm very fond of, and to actually travel to Atlanta, it's much easier than going to Switzerland, because I go to Manchester, get on a plane, and and the wind blows it, so it always goes quicker. So it always arrives. Like, it is a very reliable route, so it takes the flight's meant to be 9 or 8 hours, but it never is. However, to get to Switzerland, it was a right faff, because I had to take 2 flights and 3 trains. So it was actually to get to. So, whereas the Atlanta flight is, and I haven't even gone into jet lag and what I do on the aeroplane, because I have a whole routine of stuff that nobody has ever laughed at me about. They just kind of are interested. So anyway, so it's actually quite easy for me to get. It's a very convenient place for me to get to. So the flight isn't a problem. Then with Atlanta, because it's in the 30, I think it's the 33rd latitude, it's very, very sunny. And, you've got loads of sun, and the light cycles are more stable down there, because in Switzerland and the UK, we can have really long sort of summers, like daylight, and we can have short sort of days in the winter. And that kind of unstable, very changeable light cycle isn't very good for sort of mental health stability. Like, I'm totally fine with it. I don't like it, and I would be better somewhere where each day is 12 hours. So Georgia, in terms of light, it's more stable than it would be in the UK or Switzerland. And the sun it never gets up at stupid times like 4:30 or anything in Georgia. So there's not really that problem. So there's an amazing amount of sun. I was talking to my friend today about electrification. That in Switzerland, they're massively obsessed with saving energy. Same with the UK. We've got loads of eco washing machines and the smallest possible cars and all of this. Everything has to be compacted because we want to save energy. However, in the US, you could buy like a washing machine or a tumble dryer. I could probably climb in it and sleep in, whereas wouldn't be allowed that in the UK unless you're a laundry. And then, because I'm kind of really interested in electromagnetism and different kinds of G, I always fiddle about my phone, and I've got different meters, and it's like I can't, unless I've got a rubbish phone or rubbish SIM card, I can't get 5G in the UK. But when I went to America, I could. So I thought, oh, hang on, there's like different amount of Wi-Fi. Also here, apparently, according to my internet measurer, even though my Wi-Fi box is really old, I've got fast internet, but it takes me 2 hours to upload a video to YouTube. When I go to Atlanta, the same video size and length takes 10 minutes. And then you've got all the problem of leaf blowers, people leaving swimming pool lights on all night, people illuminating properties like Christmas. So, it's quite much harder to block out the blue light, and you need sort of not industrial strength. You need to sort of put up all this blacking stuff.
Right. The blackout curtains become incredibly important in an environment like that.
Yeah, I always
you have neighbors whose light habits you cannot control.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So on Amazon, there's actually a little kit, and I think it's about 30 or whatever pounds or dollars, and it's blackout material. It comes with all this Velcro, so you can cut it up and you can stick it in all different places, and it's actually quite a massive piece. So I forgot to say I took that to Switzerland with me because I always take blackout stuff now. So in the room I had, luckily there was just one window, so I could easily black it out, because I've stayed in some places where I've just thought I've spent ages moving wardrobes against windows and doors and finding towels, and then having to sleep naked because I've had to stick T-shirts and stuff all over the place. So I forgot to say I managed to make a 99% pitch black room in Switzerland. So that was good for there. So yeah, so back to Atlanta. So we've obviously got more electrification just because of just more devices. I would say the Wi-Fi for certain, I think, is bigger there. The actual hertz of the electrical grid in the US is 60, where it's 50 in the UK. So it's kind of different, and that has different impacts. Not that I'm going to get into it. Then I was staying somewhere. Atlanta, when you fly into it, it just looks like a giant forest. It's like, is there anything even here other than trees? So as far as a city goes, it does have a lot of trees. So there are sort of parks available for me to walk to, and the location where I could see the sunrise was pretty good, because I could if I walked somewhere I could actually see it coming up, or if me and my friend waited, we had a good chance. In the mountain, no chance of seeing the actual sun coming up because the mountains are all in the way. So I'd actually see the sun around about the UVA rise. So I would say, in terms of circadian timing, not that you actually have to see the sunset for it or sunrise for it to work, but I think it's slightly better, information wise, to actually be able to see the sunrise. But however, the information you get of just being out there is good enough. But for the perfectionists out there, it is better if you see the sun coming up. So yeah,
yes.
we've got
okay. So for Atlanta, there's more light stability. It's a little bit easier to get up for sunrise because it's not at 4:30 in the morning. There's lots of forest, which gives easy access to parks with lots of trees. However, it's also very electrified. Your neighbors have their lights on all the time, so blackout curtains become more important. So this is a really good way to explain to people like how to be a quantum biology detective for your own location, right? Just different ways to think about how to make the best of wherever you are. Okay, great.
And also back to Georgia, there's something called Stone Mountain there that I think is a meteorite, and my dad thinks I'm mad, but it is like a giant meteorite. So there is a mountain to go up, but it's sort of, I wouldn't say in terms of electrification compared to my mountain in Switzerland, it's not nearly as high. And like I said, it's kind of, you can walk up it in 40 minutes, but it's still like a thing that you can get away from houses, although it's significantly more electrified than it's it's still very city and very urban, and there's lots of people and people wearing earbuds and iPhones running up and down the mountain as well. Whereas in Switzerland, I could have gone up the mountain naked and not met anybody for an hour, whereas I wouldn't do that uh, in um, in Atlanta. So again, we've got there's also more people in Atlanta, so therefore each person comes with their devices. Whereas in Switzerland, and even where I am here, there's less people, so there's less actual people standing by
Right.
you with all of that. Then we have to sort of bring up the food thing. So when it comes to America, the because luckily with me and food, that I went into these shops and we just saw this, like there was this shop that it was like an ice cream and cereal shop, and that's all it sold, and there was just crazy amounts of food and it was just everywhere. And I actually went to Target one night, I had to get a suitcase, and I thought I'll have a treat. I was just wandering aimlessly around the aisles because there was so much. I didn't know what to buy, so always I was so overwhelmed. Couldn't choose anything, so I left without anything. Also, I don't know how to use Uber Eats, and I'm never planning on learning, so I wouldn't, want to order stuff. And then when I was talking to my friend's husband about food, he just said, he spends all day just saying no to everything. And no, I found that as well. But, we would have treats and things, but then it was something, it's like, okay, we'll have this meal together as a family. And then that's it. We're not going to have, because they obviously knew how to order food and what was decent. Um, and then there's definitely sort of more issues with the level of temptation and the level of creativity that's gone into the food, and the different flavors of ice cream and the accessibility of food. And then the other thing is obviously no sidewalks, or there's very limited sidewalks. Whereas in Switzerland, I had to walk everywhere because I'm not planning on driving on the other side of the road in a mountain by myself. And here in the UK, like I do have a car, but I'll sort of walk all the time. Whereas in the US, it's just would be a culture of not walking. And I wouldn't say it's people being lazy. It's actually really dangerous because my friend lives on
Yeah.
the world's most dangerous road. I've nearly got decapitated loads of times collecting the mail or taking the dog for a walk. And sometimes the cars would come over the hill and take off ground. And they hadn't actually really seen a pedestrian before, because there used to be this massive highway that had to cross to get to the seafood shop. That's one thing. I couldn't find very much seafood in Switzerland other than some sardines, but there was loads in Georgia. So I used to have to cross this massive highway called Lawrenceville Highway, and the traffic lights in the US just seem to be sort of random color generators. You'd press the button and it would say, okay, it's okay for the pedestrian to cross, but then a light would change and cars would zoom over, and then the traffic lights just hang like stuff on the washing line. And I just think, okay, I'm just going to run across the road because and take my chances. Because they'd never seen really many pedestrians, the cars were actually really respectful, and I didn't get beeped at or anything. And I kind of got quite good eventually at crossing the road. So that's the other problem there, the inability to be able to just go for a walk. And I do appreciate that certain areas of the US suddenly change when it becomes dark. It isn't a very good idea to go out for a walk. Whereas
Mhm.
in Switzerland, I'd feel very safe walking around in the dark. And even where I live here, there's a bit of a forest I wouldn't go in. But if I had to go to the shop at 10 o'clock, I would happily walk. Whereas I probably wouldn't do that in Atlanta, just because it kind of can change a bit. But I've been to many other places in the US, and I do know it can be a nice neighborhood, and all of a sudden it changes. And if you're not familiar with the area, you can end up wandering into stuff that you don't really want to do.
Right. Yeah. So it's a good idea just to get some local wisdom before you make any plans. So you mentioned your jet lag routine. Tell us about that.
Oh yeah, I'll just finish one more thing on the
Oh,
American.
okay.
So the really massively important thing about Atlanta is it's the only time in my life I've ever felt like I belonged anywhere.
Oh,
Because my
wow.
boyfriend and my goddaughter and the baby and the dog, and it was like that we were a family, or siblings or whatever from another lifetime. It was very weird. So, like I was saying, the Switzerland, I was completely isolated, me, myself, and I. Whereas here in Atlanta, it was like being in a family, as if we'd known each other all our lives. And it was just like so bizarre. Lots of the stuff that, and when you have that relationship with somebody, often you don't even need to speak, all the time. You don't make conversation for no reason. And, it's all, everybody's out for the best for everybody, which makes everything very, easy to do. So from an emotional level, it really just upset me massively to have to come back to the UK. But then, like, I get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when I was coming back from Switzerland, I was really sad to leave the nature, but I couldn't wait to hear British people again.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Have someone to talk to. That's really beautiful, Sarah. And I think that, and a beautiful point to make, because that does make a difference, right? It's like, okay, there's a high population density and, you have to drive your car to go for a walk in the park. But if you have a strong emotional connection and you feel a sense of belonging, that is elevating your health in a really, really powerful way.
Oh, absolutely. And then the other thing I was going to say about the different countries is I love nature and looking for new coloured butterflies or insects. So I really appreciated the thin, weird wasps in Atlanta and the big black carpenter bees. And then I've never seen a cardinal bird before, a red one. So that brought me great happiness. But what I did notice in Switzerland, there was far more wildlife to bite me or, to hiss at me or, to fly in my face. Whereas in Atlanta, I thought there should be way more birds and butterflies than there are here, because there's loads of them where I live, flapping about and, plenty of things to look at, like nice butterflies. Even just like my area is reasonably sort of rural, but it's not like countryside. So I did notice that there was still nice nature to look at. So again, I had the connection with nature and different plants and things, which I had in Switzerland, and I can be at one with them. But sometimes I just need my own species as well.
Yeah, your native species.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do jet lag, and then we can wrap, because I know you need to run.
Yeah, because I think with a lot of things, sometimes it's not the actual flight per se. It's building up to it. So with Switzerland, it doesn't really matter because it's only 1 hour time difference. So I don't really need to go to bed earlier or later or anything. So I always travel fasted, and I always make sure I eat DHA sort of food, like seafood, like more than normal the day before. Because the reason I do it fasted is if I do it keto, then no matter what, I'll find something to eat that I shouldn't, because it happens to be keto. And the reason for this is it's just so dysregulating for blood sugar with the aeroplane and being off the ground and in the blue light and stuff. It's just, I think, better. That's what I do. It doesn't mean other people have to do that as well. Then I don't drink alcohol anyway. I do very occasionally, but definitely I wouldn't do it on the flight like my mum and dad do, or beforehand like my mum and dad do as well. So I would avoid that. Then the day before, I would do like a big thing of extra grounding, trying to leave my computer alone and charge myself up and have a good night's sleep before. I also try and plan flights as much as I can to not disturb my circadian rhythm too much. Then when
that's a great point. So you actually start your travel routine the day before you fly.
Yeah.
Grounding, hydrating, getting good sleep. That's a good point. Okay.
Yeah,
and then you move into the actual travel. And so for you, does that mean booking a night flight and sleeping on the plane, or booking a day flight? What is that? What works best for you?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think airports and things do know a bit about circadian biology, because to go from Manchester to Atlanta, there's only one flight a day, and it's either at 1 a.m. British time or 11 a.m. So that just means I land in Atlanta, because it's a 5-hour difference and it's still daylight, So it's not landing at an unsociable time. So there's still plenty of time to ground, or I always go for the grounding after flying. I don't really I take a little red light panel with me on the plane, but also on the way back, there's only one flight, and it's at 6 p.m. American EST, so it's overnight. So I get back into the UK in the morning. So it's not as terribly disrupting as people might imagine. Because I always say if I'm traveling, I'll my mum likes to travel a lot and she often wants me to come as well, and I do sometimes, but she'll just try and make me get on a flight at 6 a.m. In when it's the middle of sort of October and I have to get up at 4:30, and I'll just totally mess up everything because I missed the sunrise. And so I have kind of said to her about it, there's better times to fly. And then back to the European airlines, the two flights I took, there wasn't any Wi-Fi on the aeroplane, so that's a good thing. But then when I always use Virgin Atlantic, and because their branding's red, the whole cabin is red lit because it's matching their branding, which I just think is
perfect.
And weirdly,
these are the details that only someone like you would think about, Sarah. Who's got red branded light bulbs for their interior of their planes? Virgin. Yeah, that is a pro tip. And JetBlue?
Yeah, it's called Jet2 in the UK.
Oh, Jet2. Okay.
Yeah, and then, you can, what I've also learned, and I want to say about this is, and it's something about the fear and love mindset that I've decided now I can't do anything about a lot of these things. So I'm not just going to become a recluse and live in a tent in Wales and or not travel because of EMFs and, being off the ground and all of these things. I'm just going to sort of embrace it and find something positive about being in an airport or being on an airplane. And I have to say, a European airport lit up with blue light, a massive one like Schiphol or Zurich, all lit up, is actually really beautiful and spectacular, even though it's just terrible. I mean, I can wear blue block, and I always do, but I think, okay, this looks absolutely spectacular. And also in Schiphol, the one in Amsterdam, the most confusing airport on the planet, where I've got lost in 15 times easily and nearly missed planes, has got the best ever massage like seats. And if anyone, and lots of other airports have these as well. And that's one thing I always do if I have a connecting flight, is I always go on these massage beds, and you put money in or your card, and they're actually like really amazing, just like a person almost.
Oh, that's a really good idea. So you're getting your fascia move, you're getting some movement in your fascia and in your body after sitting still for so long. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen
coin-operated massage chairs, another good pro tip.
Oh, absolutely. And Schiphol got loads of them because it's like a massive airport. And I think if for the listeners in the US, that if they do travel, they'll know that Schiphol is a massive connection area from the US, because it's lots of flights go from the US to Schiphol, and people will know what I mean about the most gigantic and weird, confusing airport on the planet with its own rules about passport control. But on the plus side, it's got showers in it, and you can just pay and have a shower. And then the massage chairs are great. And I've even seen them in airports in Vietnam. I wasn't expecting them there. So I always look, and I'm sure they're in other airports. I just haven't noticed. And
yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, yeah, you see them around the coin-operated massage chairs. Okay. And so you also mentioned bringing blackout curtains. So that's another really good pro tip. You can buy on Amazon, like easily portable, and they come with little things so you can clip them on the wall.
Yes, Velcro. So it comes. And the thing is, because it's not very expensive, you can be creative with it, or sew it to something, or use Gorilla Tape or gaffer tape. But I just think it's easier to deal with than a towel because it's so light. And even I do have a blackout curtain that I take. It's sort of like as I wrap all my stuff up in it, and it's just the curtains are just heavier, so things come. Your creation collapses in the middle of the night.
So I know. I'm laughing because we were just traveling and we stayed with a friend. Yeah. And we moved the big, tall, full length mirror in front of, there was a round window that had no curtains, and we put the mirror in front that covered the bottom half. And then we put our tote bag on top of the mirror to cover the top half and shoved it inside. So yeah, everyone listening has had that experience traveling, trying to block out all the the street lamps on.
Oh yeah, there's loads of them. Yeah, definitely. The creations that I've made and like really panicked. Oh no, am I going to pull the paint off the wall? And things like I take gold mylar with me sometimes, and I've often like locked. You find where like it's like a smoke detector, all kinds of things I wrap up in mylar or. Put things around and I always unplug if I'm in a hotel, unplug all of the electrics, and loads of times left the mylar, and they probably just thought, what the hell
What?
foil?
What is happening? Why is there tinfoil around this? Yeah.
So I think you can take it to a whole other level, but I think it becomes back to this getting so obsessive about something and being in a fear mindset. You actually isolate yourself from other human beings, and traveling is really fun, even if flights are not. There's always something like funny that you'll see in an airport. There's just the nature, and there's always weird things that happen in customs. Like I got stopped in customs, and it was over a tin of sardines.
I always have. I often get pulled randomly for the agent to just go through people's carry-on, and every time they'll pull out some kind of red light device and they'll hold it up and they'll be like, and like just hand it to me, like, hold this, and who are you? What? I've never seen this before.
They've never done that to me with my bond charge. It's never been. This is what caused. Yeah, exactly. So the sardines caused a big fuss in Zurich. Then this is one of many of my pyramids, a sacred geometry pyramid. So as you can imagine, I've got other ones with copper and stuff in there. So I accidentally left one in my hand luggage. And when I was changing flights, for some reason, I was texting my friend and I walked through the wrong door. So I ended up going out of the airport. So I had to go back in all the way all over again in Amsterdam.
Oh no.
Go through security again, and they went crazy about my pyramid. It was awful. Thinking, oh shit, I'm going to miss my flight. And like, what is this? And I had to try and explain.
For what purpose is this?
We're like,
there's sacred geometry and the.
I did, but this is the less weird of my pyramids, because I'm kind of doing some different experiments with things, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I had all these different kind of pyramids with, like, exactly, it's like, how does this work? What is it? Does it open? No. Okay, I'm going to crack it. I just said, look, it's just like it's like you said, what's it for? And it's like when someone asks me, okay, what's it for? It's like, look, I don't know.
It's like either I don't know or how much time do you have?
Yeah, it's like, how does it work? What does it do? And is it pressing? I was like, do you know what? Just take it, please. Just take it. Take it. Just let me through. You can have it. And it was like, no. And then they had to get the supervisor over, and I was just like, just take it, please. I'm going to miss my flight. So anyway, so don't take any weird sacred. If you've got crystally things that are a bit unusual,
check-in baggage.
Yeah, and don't take analemma wands through check-in baggage, because it's got liquid in it, and they'll just go completely berserk about it. And how do you explain what one of those is?
Jeez, they'd probably think it's a vibrator.
They will do. Certainly.
Probably. Okay. Yes, we are a little high maintenance, the quantum biology folks, but I don't know what to tell you. It's fun.
So getting back on track about airports, if you don't want to have one of those inspections, which do happen sometimes, just don't. Some of the quantum stuff really shouldn't be put in hand luggage, or it'll just get taken. They don't mind about methylene blue. Nobody's ever asked me what's that, and that's another thing that I do use for travel. And then I'm not a fan of hydrogen tablets to be used regularly for lots of reasons, but I think they're extremely useful on the plane, where you not allowed any, you can buy water. That's another big thing about, you can only buy their water. I think hydrogen tablets, and I have tested this quite a lot with tablets, they can be really helpful, but it's definitely not something I would take all the time. And then
I was going to ask that if there were specific supplements you take to travel that you don't take other times. So hydrogen tablets would be an example.
Yeah, and
methylene blue. Okay.
Yeah, and then sometimes I use C60 fullerene. That's Ian Mitchell's stuff. The lipofullerenes, the wizard science stuff. But it's pretty expensive, but it is actually really good. And those kind of things, they just work much better if you use them sort of short term. Say even same things like N-acetylcysteine. That's again sort of, I know it can interfere a bit with melanin production, but it has got benefits. But again, that's something that I don't take now, but I would if I remembered, if I was facing a stressful event. And then coenzyme Q10, like a sort of a slightly higher dose than normal, can be really helpful as well. Although I'd say the supplements sort of maybe is like a placebo effect. Fundamentally, it's about, having a good night's sleep before. Just don't eat any of the food in the airport, and then ground or go swimming outside as soon as you can in your destination, and then go out in the sun as well and just lie down somewhere. I mean, that's not very easy to do in the UK because the sun has gone off somewhere else for whatever reason. The clouds have taken over the UK. But in somewhere like Atlanta, when it's sunny, I would just make a big effort to be outside, and it's unlikely I would use a red light panel. I probably wouldn't do a cold plunge like a Forge thing because it's just a bit too cold and a bit too stressful. I'd look for natural water to go in, like a beach would be better. So that's definitely what I recommend. But also the whole dysregulation doesn't just go as soon as you've landed. I always have to be a bit careful for maybe the next 36 hours after I've landed. So
yeah, and just to make sure that we're taking really extra good care of ourselves after a long flight, and to let our body catch back up.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay. And so just to end, I think that sort of overall, what I think is a really beautiful point to make is that no matter where we live, we can find ways to engage with practices that are going to boost our quantum biologic capacity, and that traveling and being in places, the emotional benefits of going on an adventure or being around people we love and care about are part of quantum biologic health just as much as low EMF and natural light and all those things.
Oh yeah, definitely. And also, no matter where you go, there's always funny animals and plants. Well, I think there are anyway. And however, whatever created everything definitely had a sense of humor when it comes to some of the animals and the funny fruits and things and stuff like that. So yeah, there's always that. But I definitely think that sort of people make places as well. I think that's a phrase that people use a lot. And like you said, it's just about having people around you that understand your own idiosyncrasies and weirdnesses and kind of honor it, because it can be quite annoying to travel with a quantum person if they've got no idea why you're doing all of this stuff.
I know. I feel like I'm not high maintenance, and then I travel and I look at all the things I bring with me. I'm like, oh no, I'm pretty high maintenance.
Oh yeah, no, I feel sorry for my mum and dad because they sort of understand, but then they don't. So I crash about in their house I try and be quiet and at whatever 5 a.m. And I don't know whether I wake them or not. And then as soon as it kind of starts, if it's in the winter time, it's just got us to get sunset. Right, I'm off. Bye. Oh, do you not want some dinner? Oh no, nope. I need to go to bed. And then, like, my mum will say, "I've made your room really dark. I bought some new curtains." It's like, and then I'll go in and they're yellow, and it's like it's just as bright as before. And then they do weird things like locking all the windows, and I'm trying to open the window. No, don't open the window. Last time you did that, a robin got in and pooed everywhere, and I had to say, and then they kind of just let me get on with it. And the thing is, they're actually really accommodating, and I'm sure in their heads they're thinking, oh my god, this is the level of foil hattery just getting I'm sure they think there's something. I think they just think, okay, she's completely insane, that's fine, she's happy, just leave her.
So, you know what, that's fine. We'll take it.
And it's kind of like that. And it's also because it's one of those things, I don't inflict it on other people. It's like, well, I'm going to go to bed, I'm not saying you have to come with me. And fair enough, crashing about really early in the morning, I try and get up, go outside, and then stay out there so I don't bump around and disturb them. But as far as I know, that my mum could be listening to CNN, which she likes, she's obsessed with. I won't get into the details of politics. I just know she might be Yeah, so no, no, she'll be having a complete sort of field day at the moment about the event that's happening in November, which we won't go into. Because that's the other thing. I never watch the news anymore, and I threw my TV out 7 years ago. And I think news watching is another one of these things that can really drive you into a spiral of fear mindset. And sometimes I just have to switch off to do with listening about too much about blue light and non-native EMFs. It's like, okay, I'm just going to have to stop here and just take a breath. That's why I decided to appreciate the beauty of the blue lit airport. I thought, okay, it's
Yeah.
not very good for my health, but humans are so creative. This is just looks spectacular. Fair enough, it's not very good for me. Like when I went to Las Vegas and Fremont Street, luckily I didn't know anything about quantum biology really then, so I could really enjoy it and not. So I think
Yes.
it's also about just accepting that, yeah, we're just going to have to be exposed to stuff sometimes. And I think you
Yeah. This is,
really well, just be kind to yourself the day before. And if you do have a non-quantum day and want to go to the cinema and watch two movies back to back, just like go out and ground, or charge back up later, because otherwise you can just end up being too disconnected from society.
yes. And this is the world we live in. And it's a beautiful, crazy, chaotic, glorious place. And we're all here together. So let's have fun.
Yes, and also if you there's all different views about what happens later, and I'm not, nobody knows really, but you're probably going to be with yourself for a very long time in different forms, so you might as well like yourself as well, and also just be nice to other people. Because I think also on the subject of non-native EMFs, my Wi-Fi broke. Luckily, I've got two boxes, so I was farting around with it, fixing it right by my face for ages, and I did do it eventually. I didn't feel anything. Whereas if somebody's really horrible to me, it basically crushes me from the inside, like
Yeah.
the EMF that they emit. And I've also had to do things fiddling about with my own electrics and sort of accidentally touch things, and it's been a bit of a bite. And I've done all kinds of things in the past. I've accidentally slept with Wi-Fi's by my head and all sorts, and I'm still here. Whereas sometimes horrible vibes or person, it can just, and it's definitely, they didn't even really do anything. I don't know how to, like the vibe that I got just completely drained my electric charge. And so I think also there's a lot to be said about being as positive as possible, or trying your best just to remember to be kind to other people, because you don't know what they're going through. And I think nastiness it hurts me way more than my EMF and phone and stuff like that on a sort of emotional level. I'm not sure what you think about that, but I think also when you're,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we
yeah,
hold other people in our hands in such a fragile way that, and we forget sometimes, that crushing someone's self esteem with a callous remark or by trying to make them feel inferior or telling them they're wrong, that could derail them way more than, you know, having the wrong light at night for a few days.
yeah,
It is absolutely so important to remember that we're in relation with other people and we have to
yeah.
take responsibility for the energy that we are giving out in the same way we take responsibility for the physical light that we put ourselves under.
Exactly. And also, I always try and think now, leave people in a better state than you found them in when you depart from their company. And sure, I'll do stuff wrong and, I'm still human, but it's like a conscious effort now. And I just have the whole thing, leave them in a better state than when you found them, and just live by that for sure. And also, we don't understand plasma and ether properly anyway, or the fifth element, and good, what we can project and perturb into it. If that's like 99.99% of the universe, that's like a big chunk of everything. So just like you say, it does go a long way. Ian Mitchell, who's a wonderful man from Wizard Science, he's very much about doing things from a seat of love and always be kind. That's what he said to me because I have conversed with him, and it's been a great pleasure. And he always said, do things from a seat of love and always be kind. And he's like a mega polymath, and he really understands quantum physics. And he just said, if you do everything else wrong, just do those two things and you'll be fine.
I love that. What a
Yeah.
beautiful place to end. And Sarah, thank you. Your decision to leave people better than you found them is working out. I always feel like that after I talk to you.
Oh, thank you.
I
Likewise.
appreciate your support and your wisdom. And thank you for jumping on a podcast with me.
Oh, it's fine. I don't mind stepping into the breach. It sounds a bit rude, that, doesn't it?
Yeah. Always, I'll jump in the breach. Thanks for stepping into my breach.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I know you had a slot free, so I thought I'd just jump in.
I appreciate it. It's great to talk to you.
Thanks.
Woohoo! You made it to the end of another episode. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploratory adventure into new realms. Your energy and support are building a different world, and I am so grateful to be on this journey with you. Take care, and thanks.